Hey there, welcome back to the Fanboy Cantina. This is going to be a shorter episode. I think this is the first one I've ever done entirely by myself. So, thanks for tuning in and thanks for spending a little bit of your day with me here. So, it's Ahsoka, episode 8, the season finale. It's apparently not the series finale, but the season finale. The Jedi, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. No, the Warlord. Obviously, a Narnia reference with this week's episode. And so, what we'll do here, I think, similar format, except a little bit different. We're going to talk about the season as a whole and then dig into the episode itself. So post in the comments because I'd love to hear from you about your journey with the season. Did you like the season? Did you like the series? For myself, I am of the era where Return of the Jedi came out, and that was the end of Star Wars. That was the end of anything, right? I guess you had the Endor Ewok Adventure, and then what was the other one? Caravan of Courage. Yeah, but that was kind of it, really. Return of the Jedi. That was kind of the end. So the notion of being here today, where there are new movies, there was the prequels, the sequels, and now there's Star Wars on TV. It's just a treat. But that said, with Ahsoka, yeah, I think overall I still enjoyed the series. I still am appreciative of it. Essentially ended up being Rebels season 5. I enjoyed the Rebels show. I enjoyed the animated series. And when it ended and it had that epilogue at the end, yeah, it teased out what their stories would be. And so to be able to continue on that journey and see Sabine and Ezra and everybody in a live action form is just absolutely wonderful. And then also with the introduction of Balin Skull and Shin Hati and also obviously to see Thrawn in live action form, that's all particularly awesome. And I do like with this series, it's gone into an area that hasn't really been explored in live action form, at least, and that's to tap into this mystical element of the Star Wars world and the Star Wars universe, to dive into the stories told in the Clone Wars and Rebels of the Night Sisters and other types of things. And I think we drifted away from the possibility of the mysticism and the more spiritual aspects, I think, of Star Wars. Once we got into the prequels with the midichlorians and everything, it just seemed more clinical of how somebody has the Force. And now with Ahsoka, to be able to speak to there's also that talent aspect, and that we all have the Force. I do like the vibe of this. So overall, I still very much enjoyed the series, and I think also kind of what we talked about last week in this live stream, that you come into these kinds of shows with expectations. You think it's going to lead to a particular place, and when it doesn't go into that particular direction, there can be feelings. There's nothing wrong with having feelings. You want this story to go a particular way, it goes that way instead. And that can be disheartening or challenging for the viewer. But I think it's healthy to just appreciate the story for what it is, and also when you look at that story, looking at the pros and cons of what was ultimately delivered. But again, I enjoyed the series as a whole. All right, so let's talk about episode 8, and post in the comments, because if you're watching later or live, because would love to hear your thoughts about the episode. I'm going to show something actually on the screen. So, and thank you to Bantha Skull for amplifying this tweet that we sent out late yesterday, which was about what did you think of the episode? What did you think of the season finale? And I'm struggling to click on the link. There it is. All right. So with 89 votes cast, and again, thank you, Bantha Skull, for the retweet here. 48% loved it, 33% liked it, 16% said, meh, okay, and 3% didn't like it. I'm shocked because in the Twitter world, or whatever they call themselves now, it tends to be a hive of scum and villainy, right? And so to see that much love for anything Star Wars is shocking, and in a good way, in a good way. For myself, in this scoring, or in this ranking, I I was in that liked it category. I was in that 33%. I didn't love the episode, but I did enjoy it for what it was. The parts that I really loved were included, finally resolving some things, like understanding the Sabine and Ahsoka conflict. Why did Ahsoka stop being the master or the teacher to Padawan Sabine? So that was good that that piece was resolved. I think the lightsaber battle, or the battle between Ahsoka and Morgan Elsbeth, was absolutely fantastic. And for me, the single highlight of the episode. I think across this series, the lightsaber battles have been absolutely stellar. And that, I think, is because I need to do some research about who's doing the fight choreography here. But you can see that there's a thoughtfulness for how they've approached all of these fight scenes, where each person, whether it's Shin Hati or Balin Skull or others, they have their own fighting style, or their own level of experience. So to see the rebattle, or the what do we call this? The To see the conflict again between Ahsoka, the rematch. What's the hard? The rematch between Ahsoka and Morgan was absolutely wonderful. And I think I've said this before too. In The Mandalorian season 2, that episode with the magistrate, where the two of them meet for the first time, where Morgan Elsbeth is introduced for the first time, is one of my favorite episodes of the series. I know there's some viewpoints about Dina Lee Inosanto and her acting skills, or things like that. I can understand some of that, or I can agree with some of that, but her fighting skills are just wonderful to watch. So that battle between the two of them, well, where you got the blade of, golly, what, I wrote it down. You got the two of them battling it out, was one of my favorite. The Talzin, blade of Talzin, was one of my favorite parts of this episode. And I think the moment where, just building on Morgan, the moments that she has had in this episode were really great compared to what she was given across the previous 7 episodes of this series. Because you got to see a little bit more range. You got to see, how does one become a grandmother, or a night sister in this episode. So that was really interesting. And also where she has that moment where, she can see that she's now a different person, but then also to be essentially deflated, where she's going to have to sacrifice herself to allow Grand Admiral Thrawn more time to escape. I think it was. I think she was just given more to do. I think she was given more story to tell. So with her, I really loved. I really loved her growth as a character, and on. Okay, so we're getting into spoilers with this thing, right? And I'm also accordingly sad that she's not going to continue in this series, right? Her story ends with this episode. So now, just to speak about some things that were perhaps more challenging for me. Oh no, sorry, that's my dog. I'm in. This is my kids' room, and the dog is okay. The dog is now leaving. Wow, it's a miracle. All right, so. All right. So other things. No, let's talk about other things that were good about this episode. Also, really enjoyed, thrilled by the ending, because it kind of serves as a good bookend to this season. In the very first episode, where you see Ahsoka in this forgotten temple, this mysterious temple on her crusade or her quest to find a particular object, you think that it's going to be, oh, we're going to see the Mortis arc here, right? Because you see those figures on the walls and you think it's the Mortis arc, but it's not. Actually, it's the Night Sisters that are represented on the walls. So to have now the ending where Balin Skull has revealed part of his endgame, which is on this massive, massive statue of what appears to be the father and the son, and the destroyed statue of the daughter. That's really interesting, and no, having this promise or this potential to be able to explore the Mortis arc, that's really cool. I'm just taking a look at my notes here off to the side. Oh, now, so I think those elements in terms of what worked well, I those that's my short list. We got a bunch of things wrong in our predictions for the finale. There was no Zeb, which is kind of a surprise, right? How can you have this show without Zeb? But there was no Zeb. There was no appearance at the conclusion. Um, Obviously, it's hard to render an entire digital alien in a live action series in a compelling way across 8 episodes of content, but to not see him at all, yeah, that was a surprise. And yeah, so we got that wrong. Nobody died either, so there was no I would have liked to have seen Montana moment for Ezra. Yeah, Ezra made it home, and that was actually cool that he did ultimately made it home. So no unexpected deaths like that. um and there was no dark turn either. There was no dark turn for Sabine to the dark side, or Ahsoka to the dark side, nor Shinhati turning to the gray or to the white here, or gray Jedi of some kind. There was none of that transpired. And instead, I think we ended up with a more down the middle episode, which then gets us, I think, into some criticisms about episode 8. So while it was good to see the delivery of Sabine on her Jedi potential, right, or her ability to use the Force in the very first episode, we can see her struggling. Second episode, we can see her struggling to move a cup. We also learn from Ahsoka's talk about how there's that talent aspect to using the Force. So now we can see that she does have the talent. She's able to do that Luke Skywalker move from Empire Strikes Back and grab the lightsaber and kill off that Death Trooper, that zombie Death Trooper. So that was cool. And then she uses the Force push later on to help Ezra get onto the Star Destroyer. I think, though, there was a way to do this in a more interesting method. Perhaps if it was there was more of a buildup of, rather than having the ability to grab the lightsaber, instead that in this moment of truth, in this moment of crisis, that Ezra needs to get onto the Star Destroyer, that maybe that's the first time that she uses a Force. That could have been interesting. The way that they did it, I think, is fine. I am glad that they delivered on Sabine becoming more of a Jedi, so that is good. But that could have been done in, I think, a more compelling way. I think the single thing that I liked least, you notice it in this channel, right? We try to, stay in the positive, right? We try to not say I hate it or something. There's plenty of other channels where it's about I hate this thing. Or if we got nothing good to say, then we kind of just don't do an episode about it. So an aspect that I did not like was the Night Troopers, because you had the introduction of the Night Troopers 2 episodes ago, and you kind of wondered, with the red ribbon or fabric that's tied around them, are they going to be zombie stormtroopers or something else? And then when we look at the episode prior to this one, episode 7, where there's the ambush that happens, the literal circling of the wagons that happen, and you see the stormtroopers try to engage Ezra and Sabine and Ahsoka. They're all like chopped down like other stormtroopers that you see elsewhere in Star Wars. So here we finally get to see the zombification of the night troopers, right? You got the spooky, scary moment of the night sisters or the grandmothers um, doing the chant and resurrecting these night troopers. And that could have been interesting, but it's delivered in a yeah, it didn't seem to have as much punch, right? They didn't necessarily change their fighting styles that much, or it was actually a mishmash because you had some of the fire bad kind of that's Frankenstein, but you had a little bit of that zombie action at one point, but then the next moment they're running up the stairs to get to get to Ahsoka and the gang. I think there was a way to stage this differently, where maybe it could have been more scary or more interesting, more different. Instead, it was like they came back, and then now you got regular stormtroopers who can't shoot either. Uh, so I would have liked to have seen a different take on that. And actually, in the moments prior to this, if there's one thing that was abundantly clear in this episode, uh, the Empire, Thrawn's stormtroopers cannot shoot for anything, right? Because you had a whole bunch of different things. You had what was it? TIE fighters can't shoot a stationary object, right? That you've got Ahsoka's ship hovering over the Nati, I think, and it's essentially not moving, and they're shooting at the thing, but somehow they're missing. They get some shots in, but it's still pretty much intact. So that was not so great. And then when Thrawn is raining hellfire upon our heroes as they try to get into the temple, that was relatively cool. But they dodged all of that, and you kind of knew they were going to dodge all of that anyway. So they're terrible shots. And then I think the worst part was when you've got the night troopers in the temple, everybody is standing right there. You've got Sabine and Ahsoka and Ezra also standing there in the open, nobody going for cover, or golly, what did I just do? I don't know what I did, but nobody's ducking for cover, and they're just all sort of standing and shooting at each other. And it's just when you contrast that scene compared to the lightsaber scenes, there's just a difference in stagecraft, or just how they've staged um, these battle scenes. And for me, it didn't work, and it actually took me out of the episode. Like, oh my goodness, this is so, yeah, or it could have been better. So it was taking me out of the episode, unfortunately. Um, but it's no surprise, right? At least there's consistency across the empire, and also here in a different galaxy far, far away. Yeah, the empire is a terrible shot. Um, I would have liked to have seen, rather than have been told, the fallout between Ahsoka and Sabine, because the two of them are together, but they're not talking about what all had happened or reconciling things. I mean, that she knows, or right, that that Ahsoka knows what actually happened, and the choice that Sabine made that put the galaxy literally at risk with Thrawn. But instead, so that was okay. But in terms of that earlier fallout that happens, and that prompted Ahsoka to not train Sabine anymore to be a Jedi. Instead, it's Hu Yang and Ezra having a side conversation explaining it. It would have been nice to have that shown rather than explained in narrative form by two tangential characters for the story, um, in the final episode of the series. And I think you could probably, yeah, and so that was just front of mind for me. You may have other examples where it would have been nice to see something as opposed to having it explain the narrative. Yeah, you've got 6 episodes that are clocking in at, or excuse me, 8 episodes that are clocking in at what, 45, 50 minutes. So it's not like you don't have the time to show some of these stories. It's not like you've got the requirement of being 2 hours and 30 minutes long. And so you're going to truncate this. They could have spent, I think, some time, whether in flashbacks, it could have been in the World Between Worlds episode to see some of these things. I think there was a way to show it rather than talk about it in narrative form. And I think I'm just looking at my notes here off to this side. Two more things that um, did not work for me as well. You've got in the very first episode these really strong, two interesting characters in Balin and Shinhati. And so there was so much focus on them in the front half of the series. And then we've barely seen them much at all in the back half of the series. Or in the case of this finale episode, I think maybe they had a minute of screen time, if that. Um, so that an interesting story choice, but I wrestle with this because if they had included them in the story, would it have been like a disservice, right? Would it have been shoehorned in like, oh, we got to figure out what to do with these two characters anyway, but we can't kill them off because we need them to still exist in the next season apparently of Ahsoka. So I don't know. What do you think? Was it a good thing that they were off the table, or was it a bad thing that you introduced these two really interesting characters in the first episode, but in the final episode, yeah, they're really an afterthought. You only see them in the final few minutes of the episode. So I wrestle with that, and I don't know what would have been the better story choice for how to include them, or what they did of not including them. Yeah, and then another and my final thing I think about criticisms here with Thrawn. I don't feel like we got to see how scary he actually is. And unless you consumed anything, like whether you read the Timothy Zahn books, or read or watched the Clone Wars or Rebels, you got to see Thrawn as a character develop, or you got to read about who Thrawn is. And here, right, you get this looming threat of Thrawn as a danger to the rebellion, to the New Republic, but you don't really get to see any of that. And uh, even in the past 2 episodes, where they tried to show that maybe he's playing, three-dimensional chess or something like that, but really they didn't deliver on anything compelling that showed the strategist or the mind games that Thrawn can play. You got a little bit of it in his little bit of a speech with to Ahsoka in this finale before he jumps into hyperspace. But yeah, when in last week's episode, the end game was for Thrawn was apparently to eat more time with Ahsoka, to delay Ahsoka from doing something, and so that was okay. Well, you could have just sent more troopers to kill off Ahsoka. That would have possibly worked. Or in this case, in this episode, there's the threat of not underestimating the Jedi, or I've studied Anakin, I know what he would do, and so I assume that you would do the same. But there's not really a delivery of, okay, so then what was unique about how Ahsoka treated the scenario that um, it demonstrates that Thrawn had that insight. It didn't really connect. Another take could have been, because he makes that jump into the galaxy that we're more familiar with, to have seen maybe a battle of some kind, or to have seen an entrance of of Grand Admiral Thrawn and being welcomed by the Imperial remnants, or to have waged a battle of some kind against a republic colony or something. There was perhaps a way to show in this series why he was such a grave threat to the New Republic, but you don't really get that in this episode or in this series. So that's a struggle that I have with Thrawn, with how Thrawn was characterized. Still happy that Thrawn is here. Still cool that it's in live action, but I think in the delivery, yeah, it falls short. It fell short of conveying who even you see in again Clone Wars and Rebels, things that are in Star Wars canon. Yeah. Okay. So I think that I'm sure there's something else that's going to pop up in terms of criticism, but just to reinforce it, I had a good time with this series. I had a good time with this finale. It's just that I would have liked a little bit more in the end delivery. Okay. So question for you of with the how things have ended here. Um, would you recast Balin Skull? Um, it's a shame because obviously it's a shame that Ray Stevenson had unexpectedly passed away. I think he was 59 or so at a young age. Um, so it's that by itself is obviously a tragedy. Uh, Bringing it to just this TV show. Um, you can see the potential for this character, and I think he was probably the most interesting new character introduced in this series, compared to like maybe Shinhati or Captain Enoch or some other characters. Yeah, I think this character was among the most interesting new Star Wars characters that we've seen added to the series in quite a while. So, and then bringing it back to the actor, just recognizing his body of work. He had roles in the Marvel franchise, and yeah, he was also in Punisher, Warzone. So I guess that's also still Marvel franchise, but he's had so many different roles over the years. But it's kind of a side character, or didn't fully realize what he was capable of. And I think in this episode, or excuse me, in the series, you can see his depth as an actor and his gravitas as a person, as a figure. So uh, it could have been such a wonderful springboard opportunity for Ray Stevenson to build his career and build his brand, and see him expand as an actor. So obviously, the passing of anyone is sad, but in this case, it's a tragedy on two levels, because we will not see his career continue to flourish, or where it could have gone from here. But then also, yeah, more selfishly, I guess, what's the impact of this Balin Skull character? All right, so that was a lot of talking. So with Balin Skull, would you recast this role? Would you want to have a CGI or AI rendered facade of that Balin Skull character? Um, I would not. I think they definitely should recast Balin Skull, and the person that I think would be great at it. I don't know if he would do it. I was watching Punisher Warzone the other day, and I think it's on Prime Video, or it's somewhere streaming. And that movie ain't great. Punisher Warzone is not a great movie. There's a lot that's not great about it. It feels dated. It's clearly from a different time of approaching these kinds of movies. But there's a moment where he is in side profile view, and kind of the way he talks, it gave me the Liv Schreiber vibes. And he's got similar kind of facial structure. It's not, no, it's not the same, similar, but similar kind of facial structure. And if you remember his saber tooth, kind of bulk from Wolverine. Was it yeah, Wolverine. Maybe he could do it. But I think they should absolutely recast him. It would be unfortunate because you got the springboard with that epilogue to see where he goes next, to continue into the Mortis arc, to go deeper into the mysticism that Star Wars can be. It would be unfortunate if they just pivoted and or killed off the character or some other angle like that. I would like to see the character continue. I know there's other views on that. Would love to hear your view on that. All right. Well, I think that's about it for me about this episode. Thanks for watching. Thanks for spending a bit of your day with us here at the Fanboy Cantina. And post in the comments because we do read them. We'd love to continue the conversation with you. And I guess it's going to be a while before we see an Ahsoka season 2. I don't think there's been any kind of announcement about a continuation for this series. But so it's unfortunately, I think, going to be a while before we get to see what happens next, and also how do they address some of these challenges with casting and so forth. All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for me. Thanks again for spending a bit of your time. If you can do us a favor, hit the like, hit the subscribe. It helps us to build the channel. And I'll post in the comments here the Twitter survey. There's just at the time of this video, there's a little bit of time left to complete the survey. Post, yeah, did you love it? Did you like it? Was it meh? Or did you not like it? All right. Thank you so much for watching. This has been the Fanboy Cantina. Take care. Have a good night. See ya.